stand, visa stand. It's all innovative, and for this summit we prepared it. And perhaps you've seen Yaroslav, the wise, Cossack Mamai, Duke de Ruselier. There's the interactive stand from our Odessa colleagues. It took them 6 months. We have tablets and we have augmented reality, and you can listen to very important people, historic figures, and as a tourist I can come to you and take this, and you can do this with a photo and have a great amount of information. In Ivano-Frankivsk they did it. Perhaps you know, QR pods are available everywhere. You can click and have a history of this very important city hall. And it's not just to advertise Frankivsk, but as a tourist I can enjoy it. We also have a hashtag, Mayor's Power it's called, and you can use it when you write and make photos and make tweets. The majority of you are still here. Usually people tend to leave any conference in the afternoon, after lunch specifically. There are many people in the wings, so I would like my facilitators to come to my rescue and that was our facilitator.
I guess we would need another 2 minutes to begin. Still playing with augmented reality. The interactive stand, which is presented by Pixelated Realities, the company from Odessa, which has spent a month and a half to prepare this installation specifically for this summit. Хто з вас був?
Have you visited the Netherlands as of lately? Anyone? One, two? I'm going there next January. Perhaps you know what to expect, but I will still make an announcement. But in a couple of minutes, we can put on some music, I suppose. We have our traditional partners on the screen. Western NIS Enterprise Fund is the major sponsor. Organizers we call Visa, Data Group, and a host of other media partners. Mila, can we now start now? Right, great. So your patience is very important. We value it very highly. I'm acting as the operator. Your call is very important to us. Just wait on the line. We have 5 viewers, 6. You can share our podcast among your subscribers. You can reach probably know that at 1500 we'll have this farthest room StartupCity track. It will be solemnly opened in due course, and the signal is issued. You'll see something also here because we'll have a stand-up. As we see in mass media.
Please take your seats. Our program will begin shortly.
And now I can at last thank all our partners in the usual way. I forgot to do it in the very beginning. Now I would like to make up for it, to ask you whether you have seen the interactive stands. You've told me that you've seen them, you saw them, and the interactive stands from Pixelated Realities that made your conversation with Daniel King of Galicia, Cossack Mamai, Yaroslav the Wild. For 6 weeks they were in preparation of this hashtag Mass Power, and this is the third part, the third panel. Ask you about visiting the Netherlands. We had some hands flagging. I think there are more people just modest about their traveling experience. So you saw that on the agenda. We invited you, announced that And now, in more detail, we will discuss with a special guest of honor who represents the Netherlands. And I've been over last years 5 times there. My next trip is due next January. Then more about tulips and dams, any more than anyone else. It's very important point. This is my first opportunity to shake hands with Royal Highness. So first of all, honor him. And we would like to invite him to his stage.
І це
And this is a very exciting moment.
yeah, go ahead then, please. Right, that's your thing.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for having me. I will talk slowly because of translation. Is that yes? Should I talk slowly because of translation?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think it's really important that cities take innovation and startup seriously. I come from the Netherlands, and I represent an organization called Startup Delta, which was formed by the government to boost startups, entrepreneurship, and innovation. And sometimes people say, why do we need governments involved? This is all private sector. But we know that in our economies where we have a large involvement of the government, we want governments to embrace this entrepreneurship so that entrepreneurship, the private sector and the public sector can support each other for the creation of jobs, but also the adoption of new technologies, and also by innovating public services. So, and I was invited here. I'm very glad to be here to talk to you a bit about my experiences in the Netherlands and in the rest of Europe and the world, because I've been very privileged to go around and see many places and where many of these developments are taking place. Because this is not something that is the domain of just America or just Europe, or but across Asia, Africa, actually the whole world, you find places that are innovating, that are adopting new technologies.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Prince. Окей, не працює переклад. Пофіксіть, будь ласка, переклад. А ми шипить. I'm sorry, Prince. There is a thing with simultaneous translation. I guess it's for us, to be pictured for future. Now it's been fixed. Все, пофіксили. Okay, let's go on. Sorry.
Okay, it's all not that relevant what I'm saying, so I'm not going to repeat it. But what I want to say is I'm very grateful to be here and to share some of my experiences and to underline the importance of the engagement of mayors, of city aldermen and civil society in driving innovations in cities. And I'm very happy that we can connect to that development here in the Ukraine.
Thank you. We're happy to have you here. Just have your seat, and I want to go on. Yeah, продовжу.
I understand that many of you would like to put a question to His Royal Highness. And now we have Startup Amsterdam as our partner, one of the co-founders, Ruben Even, who is co-author of the book StartupCity. There was a great queue is underway, but there was a long queue, and for a whole year he was busy, and Roman is telling me that he's on his way. So next part we have this kind of half firesides, and we would like to invite Irina Ozimek, who would interview Prince van Orenham. Your applause, please. As we have already mentioned, Ruben is on his way. He has landed already, but He's not yet available. I would like to thank him personally and Startup Amsterdam for agreeing to be our partners. As you know, recently we had some sad news because Mayor of Amsterdam, that is very much loved who was very much loved by the citizens of Amsterdam, passed away, and when the people got to know about his bad condition, they came to thank him. Citizens of Amsterdam, last farewell to the mayor of Amsterdam. It's a very sad occasion, but it's great to have such inspiring examples, and for you it's also a story of success, and people have to take care so that we can thank the mayors for their service to the city in such a touching way.
Can have an informal and nice conversation. First of all, I would really like to thank you for you accepting our invitation, and for us it's very important because I also know that it's your first time in Ukraine, and that's very important that people can meet a person that is from the royal family as well, and we were calculating that in the world there are only 26 monarchies currently. And I'm sure everyone has a question, what is it to be, how does it feel to be a prince? Do you still need to go to work, to deal with startups? Like, what is this for you?
Yeah, I don't think about it that much, actually. In the Netherlands, we believe everybody is better off to work. And so we are expected to work and find our own job and make our own careers. And but my career took its path, and now I'm startup envoy of the Netherlands, so now I have a public function. But that's not really related to my royal background.
Great, thank you. I will be quoting you a lot today, yes, because I read a number of interviews with you, so now I can quote you. In one of the articles in Financial Times, you once said that being a public figure is always helps.
There's a problem with it.
Можна, будь ласка, перевірити переклад, бо кажуть, що не працює. Можливо, там є якийсь канал, який має бути включений, просто озвучте.
Зараз цим займаються, а ми тим часом оголосимо конкурс англійської мови на пізніше. А зараз ми пофіксимо швиденько звук для вас.
Technical conditions. So we're trying.
Can we check? Давайте
Prince Van Oren into Ukrainian and
I
in
will
English.
ask my questions in both languages. Okay.
Okay, wonderful.
So sorry for this, but we will try to fix it as fast as
Я буду
possible.
перекладати за принцем.
So being a public figure always helps because it's pretty important to influence the transformation, and when you're a public figure you can voice some messages. So I was wondering, like, what do you consider one of your biggest achievement in like promoting startups and startup ecosystem, like as a startup envoy? I will translate it into Ukrainian.
Well, it typically doesn't work that way. That you have this is a very complex combination of investment, access to talent, involvement of the government, of universities, etc. So, what you try to achieve is a movement or momentum in which all those parties start to look more positively towards innovation and start to embrace it. So.
May I translate this first part, please? If you don't mind? Okay. So, зазвичай це так просто не робиться, це взагалі складний комплексний процес, де потрібно, щоб усі сторони знайшли спільну мову, і лише після цього можна буде йти далі досягнення цієї мети.
It's working, yeah?
А ну-ка перевірте.
I hear everything in Ukraine, so it must work.
That's good. Again, quoting you, and that's probably the quote that Ukrainians will love a lot. Once you said that in governments there are a lot of mechanisms to make sure that things don't happen, and entrepreneurs are people who are really moving innovations. How could you explain this? Why people in local governance and in the state, at the state level, why they are less interested in innovations? Why it's so complicated?
That specific remark was made in a context when somebody asked me why I left the European Commission and started my own business. And after I was done, I was head of cabinet of Commissioner Kroes, Nelly Kroes. She was vice president of the European Commission, and it was a very interesting job. And so I could have stayed and I could have done it, but I felt that what I was doing was trying to convince people that were all trying not to change. So we had our member states, we had vested interest, like the telecom sectors, we had sometimes our own people, and we were very eager to change things. We were dealing with the digital transition. So we were making the point that this was going to transform the government, would transform the economy, would transform society, and we couldn't fall behind. And we were trying to speed up processes, and we felt that many people were trying to stop us from changing. And then I thought, I'm getting good at avoiding all these people and trying to get to my point, but I don't want that. I want to work with people that have a can-do mentality, that have ideas and I want to execute them. And then I thought I have to go and leave government for a while. So I started my own business.
And still, governments and business are aiming to achieve results. What would be your three top things that governments can learn from business?
Well, typically, government is very process-oriented, and a business is could be more project-oriented. And you have obviously profits as a very strong indicator if you're successful or not. So governments could be more focused on achievement and being measurable in their achievements. I think it's also very much about people. Governments treat their people really well when it comes to all kinds of entitlements, but not that well when it comes to career paths, getting bonuses, for instance, or giving people the tools to excel and do things differently. So you are motivated to avoid risk. You're motivated to always stay within the lines and do that well, and be very process and procedural focused. And I think government can change that. That's one thing. The second thing is we're seeing in business that traditional businesses find that they're not innovating fast enough. And this is exactly the same as in government. You have old organizations with old processes are trying to reinvent the things they're doing, and that's difficult. So you have to work with outside people. So the government as well, I think there's a big challenge to open up, to work with people that have ideas and provide services outside the government. So the idea that the government is a monopolist on public services and the public space, I think that's something that can't be retained anymore. And I think the government should be much more open in the data that it produces and is sharing that data, inviting innovators to come in, so procuring innovations from, for instance, startups. So I think in that sense we can learn from each other because business is going through the same transition.
It's very interesting what you're saying, and because I do think that from local governance, at least from what I saw in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam in particular, I do think that they are more open, that like our mayors here, like I will give you an example. I was pleased to meet this year the CTO, like Chief Technology Officer in Amsterdam, and what I've learned, they also sometimes that when they don't have enough people to solve some problems, or like they need to invite some consultants, what they do, they invite people from startup community, people from this office, like from the municipalities, they voice the problems they have, and that's basically, they are given a chance to these young guys, students also, to find ideas, and then the one that is like really really good one, then they finance it from the local budget. That seems to me quite an interesting and opening example of at least local governance and the city. Is it something common in the Netherlands, or it just a testing case of Amsterdam?
No, I think local governments do want to be innovative generally and do want to engage with the people, and so that's maybe more the tradition. I think that like in many cities now and local towns are reinventing themselves a bit, and Amsterdam has been piloting this idea of an entrepreneur in residence, and which comes very close to innovative procurement. So basically you procure a solution, you basically by stating the problem. So this is a problem, we don't know how to solve it, we don't know who can solve it, but we invite people to come up with creative solutions, and then once the solution, it could be completely out of the box. And but it means that you have to be careful not to be too prescriptive. And typically, public procurement is very prescriptive. So we have that problem and we want that solution, and basically we already know who's going to provide it. This kind of turns that whole process around, and it is sometimes difficult for government to accept that they don't know the solution, and that they are actually asking people out there to come up with more creative ideas than they had themselves.
Yes, that's basically like another question. Is this sign of openness cannot be translated as the sign of weakness, you know, when they want to communicate, collaborate, but then people say, because you don't know the solution.
But this is like old management or old leadership versus new leadership. The old leader will know everything, and then, you know, if you trust someone who knows everything, that can last for a very short period of time, and then there will be someone who knows more. And every company that now wants to be competitive, they should acknowledge one thing, is that you'll never have all the bright people in your company. You'll never have all the bright people in your office. And if that would be the case, your office is much too big and you're ineffective. And many bright people together is not going to work either. So acknowledging that you don't know everything is really important. And also communicating that to your team, saying, you know, I don't know everything. I get you in my team because I think that you have talents I don't have. And by knowing your own weaknesses, you're much stronger, because then you can procure it from the outside. So what traditionally is seen as maybe as a sense of weakness, where the leader knows everything, I think now we know that you can go much faster and much further if you accept that you're just a human being and you have good skills in combining all those talents that other people have into a single vision. And that's where the leader is important, to set the vision and make sure that all those elements contribute to the vision.
That's really great. And then sometimes, like looking weak, it's not exactly being weak, you know, but really being open to the partnership and collaboration. I think the word collaboration and engagement, it's a new trend in the world in general. I was very much impressed by my last visit to Amsterdam. I was visiting the Next Web conference, 12,000 people, if I'm not mistaken, big budget, the whole, like a small city of where startups from all over the world are coming. I even met people from my hometown, Lviv. It was interesting, the young startups and trying to create things and go globally. Why cities organize this kind of events, like once per year, sometimes twice per year? Why do they need to have all these people coming to their city and not somewhere like Silicon Valley? You know, that's already the place for startups.
Well, that's the ambition of cities, that they don't want everybody to go to Silicon Valley, but they want these bright people to come to their cities. It must be said that Next Web is a private initiative. It's not the government initiative, so it's an entrepreneur who set up a conference quite some time ago, and it's doing really well. And the government benefits from it because the city attracts new people, and it's very good to have bright people, young and old, to come together and to associate that, you know, their success with your city. So cities do this, they do it, but mostly I think the ones that do it well don't have a very strong city stamp on it. You know, there will be a local entrepreneur who is driving it, who is much closer to the community of the entrepreneurs, of innovators, and so if cities want to emulate this, my advice would be not to try to do it yourself, but to try to work with people like you or others that actually are in the community and that know much better what's happening on levels of technology, of business development, and also what the challenges are that your audience actually wants to listen to.
The reason why I was asking this also because in my hometown, Lviv, which is in the west of Ukraine, closer to Polish border, the city is not only known by developing in tourism, but also in IT, and they created another event which is called IT Arena. It looked quite impressive this year, and I'm wondering maybe you could give them some tips what to do that people come to Lviv and don't come to Amsterdam.
Yeah, why would I do that? No, they should come to both. I mean, I think you should be differentiating yourselves. So why would you go somewhere? It's because you find something that's either inspiring or is going to help you achieve your goals.
But talking about startups or like ecosystem, you know, why you go to learn or to reinforce your startups in Amsterdam and not to Lviv, for instance, in this case?
Well, I'm going to Slush after this. I'm going to Scandinavia. And why? Because there's a lot of stuff going on in Scandinavia. And there's a lot of capital being invested in. At Slush, you'll have and the same as the Next Web, you'll have Americans, Israelis, and Chinese, and investors, corporates, and startups coming together. So at a certain point, you have a critical mass of people, and it doesn't really matter what program you have, as long as everybody's there that you want to meet, then you go. So if everybody, you do something in your hometown that is so attractive for the right people to go there, the rest will come as well.
Great. And again, talking about Amsterdam, I would like to recall again, I was mentioning this morning that Amsterdam got an award for European Capital of Innovation in 2016, and we have a video showing us why Amsterdam earned this nomination. Можемо включити.
The I is for individual, and Amsterdam represents the collective. Together, all these I's make up the city, where they also support and promote it.
This is ours, how can we act upon it?
Why buy if you can borrow for free?
Amsterdam is key for our success, and we're proud to be a part of it.
65 developers and designers are working on smart solutions for the city, for the arena. They've got 48 hours.
In this project we use the Smart Citizen Kit, which is an open source, low-cost sensor kit.
That looks impressive, and unfortunately Ukrainian cities cannot compete because we are not in the EU yet, but that's the competition that we might consider in some future, maybe. In the video we saw that the innovations are also based on collaboration. Are there some examples that you saw where city is collaborating with startups, to provide, or business to create some innovations in the city?
Yeah, so we have, for instance, in Rotterdam, we have a mobility lab, and the city basically said, if you have a prototype or if you need a testing ground, you can use the city as your basically laboratory. So someone would have a new parking app or would have a car sharing solution, and they could basically test it in Rotterdam, and then which is nice because then you can test it, show it works. The city might become the first client, or you find an investor to grow the business further. So they had I don't know how many, something like 20 startups, but in the end it was a final, and then they had maybe 10 startups, and they were all presenting. But they all had real solutions, and they were applying them in a real-life environment, which was created by the city.
It's interesting because what also Ruben and Bas are writing in their book, StartupCity, that we translated and presented last year, and gave all the copies, and he signed a lot of them. He said about the notion of governpreneurship, where the government should also learn from entrepreneurs and to be innovative in this way of collaboration. Do you use Uber?
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, because I was thinking that you only have drivers, and the thing
Why
is...
would I only have drivers?
The thing is, why this...
I take the train every now and then.
Oh, so. Wow. And do you also use bicycle?
Yeah, of course.
In the city? Wow.
It's more, the biggest luxury in life is if you can choose whatever is most suitable to you. And that's the great thing. Now we have Uber, you have, if your trains run on time, you can have a bike. A bike is much more healthy to get around town. So, use whatever you can get.
What are the other applications maybe that you use that facilitates your life in the city? It can be, I don't know, checking traffic or paying communal services like electricity through your phone. What is really services that facilitate your life?
Well, the easiest is park line or park assist. I mean, if you can just basically pay for without having coins or having cards, or and you can pay by minute. So and you can always kind of recharge. So those kind of services are very, very convenient and very simple.
Great. Again, talking about my hometown, that is the slogan of the city is the Lviv is open to the world. But still, Ukrainian cities are very Ukrainian. We see some foreigners coming to work here. In Kyiv, maybe there is a biggest concentration on the foreigners. But the role of Dutch cities are quite international. What is the added value for city if they have more international people, students, also probably entrepreneurs come into their cities? How foreigners can influence the city they come to?
I think in many ways, but this is also, I mean, it's a vision on society. Some people don't share that vision, that when you have a lot of foreign influences, you're always challenged, you challenge your own cultural beliefs as well. So you change, and you have to adapt. You have to adapt your own cultural reality to what's coming from abroad. and some people don't like that. So it's not, economically speaking, it makes a lot of sense because you will be much closer to the latest developments. You have people, for instance, if we look at the Netherlands, the Israelis are bringing a lot of cybersecurity, Americans might, and AI and those kind of things. So you really want to be working with the best people if you want to grow and if you want to build new businesses and if you want to innovate. But you can also try to do it all yourself, and it just it costs a lot more money probably, and I find it less exciting because you don't see new ideas coming from other people. So my view is that's an enrichment of society. I think other people might feel that it's a threat and that they don't like it to be that open. And I think big metropolitan cities will always have that challenge, but also they have basically the duty to absorb many people from many backgrounds. They will also have people coming from the countryside coming to the cities, and they also need to be adopted or absorbed in the city. So I think it's maybe a bit different from metropolitan areas, and those typically will want to attract very bright people from abroad because there's a shortage of those people, and to feed their businesses. And maybe you should just look at it as a university. If you can attract a few of the best professors in a certain area, you know that many of the junior professors and the PhDs and also will benefit greatly from having someone like that. So, and that's the same in the city. If you have a good company, we have Uber. Uber creates around it a whole ecosystem. We have Netflix. We have many of those American companies that are based in Amsterdam, and they help create this whole tech ecosystem. And so we have our own companies like Booking, and we have TomTom and some really big homegrown companies. But then together with those foreign companies, they create an ecosystem where you see that innovation is really accelerating.
That's very interesting because we have the example of Tel Aviv, and they even created a special program to welcome startups, entrepreneurs from different countries. Brilliant one. They even give them a special visa, that allows them to stay and to have something made in Israel. As I've learned, you also have something similar. It's called Warm, let me check to be exact. It's called Warm Welcome for Talent program, yes, when the foreigners are coming and are creating there. So basically that's the approach to, as you say, like for enrichment and to have probably a little bit more different focus on even global problems with foreigners. That's probably something that Ukrainian mayors can also borrow. And if I'm not mistaken, there was something similar, the idea was similar in Odessa, where they wanted to bring people from all over the world to stay there, and especially there is a nice sea there, and it's a nice place. Like in this morning, and we in preparing this summit, we called and organized the rating of most innovative mayors in Ukraine. What would be your personal criteria for innovative city? What should be there?
Yes, an innovative city. Well, I think an innovative city is one that listens to its citizens. I think it's, and not in the kind of governance way that everybody has their opinion, but when people have ideas that they actually are listened to and taken seriously. I think in many ways people can organize themselves. You don't need the government to organize. So you're in your neighborhood, and I think cities that actually empower people or empower business to take charge of their space around them will typically be more innovative than others. And so openness is probably a very good indicator. I think the way government interacts with its scientific community will show, and not because typically governments do policy but don't apply it to themselves. So if you find a government that is actually applying, like with my example of Rotterdam, or like what Amsterdam is doing with entrepreneurs in residence, it's no longer city marketing, it's real. I mean, they want to provide better services to their citizens because they're engaging other people. So that's also an indicator. And another, maybe a last thing is transparency and the use of government data. So if a government is generously sharing its data set so that others can actually provide business on top of that, that's an indicator that the government is really kind of eager to reach out, and because if you share data, you're sharing power, and if you're able to share power to make other people more successful, that's a really good indicator that you are innovative.
So assessing Dutch cities, what is the most innovative city for you personally?
Well, they all, I mean, the smartest city was, they're all kind of competing in a friendly way, but like Eindhoven is the high-tech city, and it was the smartest region in the world at a certain point, so they were really kind of venting that out, and then Amsterdam became you saw the I don't know, the smartest city, and so then was suddenly Amsterdam, and people in Rotterdam will say, oh, you mustn't only be smart, you also have to work hard, and so working hard is about execution, so we are much more effective, so it's smart and effective. I don't know. I just think that these things help a bit to motivate people to go a little step further, to step out of their confidence, and also give people like you and me a way to compliment cities because they're doing so well and they're taking those steps forward.
Here in the room there are mayors from different cities. In Ukraine is divided in 24 regions. There is a main city of the region, and there are lots of small cities. What are the chances for a small city to be innovative? Because of course, if we did especially this rating, Ukrainian rating for cities up to 500,000 citizens, because if we announce it for bigger cities, most probably Kiev would win because that's the capital, the biggest financial resources are here. So, but small cities, can they compete? Do they have a chance to be competitive in innovations?
Well, I think it's a bit like small countries, big countries. So big countries have a big market, a lot of resources, and they have an advantage, but they're also slow. If you look at a country like Estonia, has been remarkable in its speed of its accelerated innovation. Israel, Singapore, also the Netherlands. We have an advantage of being small. We're more flexible. People know each other, so you can actually do business together. We are the size of one state. If you take Silicon Valley, that's about the size of the Netherlands. So it gives you agility. And I think in a small town, if you really want to be innovative, you can be innovative. You can make it much easier to do business, to establish yourself, and reduce all the bureaucracy and the complexity that you have in big cities. Make sure that you are accessible. How easy is it to meet the mayor of Kiev? How easy is it to meet the mayor of a small town?
I will tell you a secret.
Yeah.
He is jogging and also cycling every morning from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. In one park here in Kiev. So
you all cycle along. If you want to meet the mayor of Kiev, you cycle along with him. Well, I think so. Small towns that actually are where you can talk to the people that are in charge, where you can actually make deals. Then that's much more flexible. Like I talked to someone who in Luxembourg. He said, "Well, why would you go to Luxembourg? It's not so connected." I said, "Well, they're the government. They all eat pizza in the same restaurant on Friday afternoon. And if you have a real problem, you can go and eat pizza with the minister, and they will help you." So this was for Skype, and Skype established himself in Luxembourg, and everybody said it's all about taxes and stuff. So it's more than taxes. Because when they went to the United Emirates, the minister would come along. So they would, they're just a business. But the minister, because there are not that many other businesses, could have the time to help these foreign businesses succeed. And you would never get that in a big country. So small can be very sweet as well.
That's extremely interesting because we also in this, again, referring to this rating, we have the mayors of small cities up to 20,000 and 35,000, and they're very energy efficient. They meet people in the street. Of course, when it's a small city, it's mayors are very recognizable. So basically, they are very much closer to their citizens.
I think you're a very good example of this. Being more circular or environmentally friendly. These things you can organize with your citizens. You can start a sharing economy in a much smaller community, much easier than cities. And what I find is that even in complex systems like government or city government, even big organizations, it's often one person. And it's one person that makes the difference. In a school, why is one school going so well? It's the headmaster, or there's maybe one teacher who understands something about computer programming or software coding, and it's because of that person that whole school is suddenly doing really well. In my neighborhood, there's a school that won is a very local school. Kids, were not very technical or anything. but they started this Lego robot challenge, and they won the World Cup in Lego robot challenge. And now that school is known for its, and it's still a little room in the basement where the few kids a few teams are doing these robot challenges, and it's one teacher. So I think it's often we make things really big, but it depends. And you see the mayor of Amsterdam, he got his applause because very sadly he passed away. But I mean, he acknowledged the importance of startups and innovation, and he and his deputy mayor, Kajsa Ollongren, who now is our Minister of Internal Affairs, they were the ones that enabled this whole movement. And you see that where Amsterdam was 10 years ago and where it's now, there's a world of difference. So it's possible. But a few people, and you have Ruben here, you have other people, but those are the people that make the change in practice.
You know, very often we were inviting foreigners now to come to sacrifice a year of their life and to come to be reformers in Ukraine.
Why is that a sacrifice?
Because
it can be very exhilarating
because they
experience.
refuse from their well-paid jobs in business or in other positions. So let's assume you get an offer and you can afford it for yourself to be a mayor of one of Ukrainian cities. You would accept it for some time. What would be the first steps you would do? What would you start with?
You're very nasty. You're a nasty person. I once said, being a mayor of a big city must be the most exciting thing, because you can actually still, people, and you can actually change things. And when you're in the government, it's all statistics and policy, but there you're on the ground. You can still go into the schools. And my former boss said, never ever go into local politics, because you might think you control, but there's so many fractions, and it's so difficult. It's so demanding. It's a 24/7 job. And you're always a loser at the end. So I don't know. I don't know what I would do.
You would talk to people first.
I would talk to people. I would invest a lot in education. I think that's really important. I think that the young generation, if anything you can do, is make sure that the young generation gets the opportunities that they need, and do a lot about social justice. I think. If there's one big challenge that we have in the West, all of these stories, all of this startup thing is really great, but it also leads to a bigger wealth disparities, and that's not sustainable. So in the end, it's really important in cities that you don't have a permanent undercast of people, where all the dark side of society starts to how you say that, cement itself. So in a friend of mine who used to be mayor of The Hague, someone who I respect deeply, said that a city should be something like a ladder. There's always going to be a new group of people that have very little opportunities, and so, but that should never be the same group all the time. So you have to make sure that the city takes these groups and make sure that they get housing, that they get education, that they get healthcare, and make sure that they don't stay stuck on the bottom. So there must be a kind of a vertical dynamic in a city, and where people have the opportunity to go from being less privileged to very privileged within their lifetime.
That's very interesting what you're saying, because for me personally, the last revolution we had in Ukraine, revolution of dignity, for me the biggest achievement, I think that's what we call now responsible citizenship. When people are really taking responsibility, people are creating initiative, they go to the mayors, to the government saying, let's do this initiative, let's do this project. So it's like really citizens became proactive. But still, we have a huge number of people who are what we call sitting on the sofa, and it's so easy to complain sitting in front of your TV, saying that everything is wrong, and like being criticizing everything, but being passive. How a good citizen should be? Because we always criticize mayors, we want always mayors to be better, but can citizens be better in terms of like contributing to city development?
Yeah.
Great.
I mean, people are what they are, and I think if people get, I think in general, if people have opportunities, they might start to move from the couch. But how difficult is it? I mean, I have kids, and they sit behind their PlayStation far too much, and it's very difficult to get them off the couch.
So how do you do this?
You get off the couch. I mean, that's still within the family or within the school. Maybe you can still command people, but in the end, you have to have opportunities to be that citizen. And I find it, if you talk lots about citizenship, also Europe, it's always about what is a citizen, and do you feel citizenship towards Europe or to your city or to your country. I find these discussions by politicians are very complicated ones, because you don't really control that sentiment. And though we desire everybody to be participant and be kind of very responsible and all that, we know that that's not always the case. But we also know that if people have opportunities, and if they feel that they have ownership of something, ownership of an idea, of a development, or maybe, as you were saying, something like climate change and doing something about it, you see that communities can become very, very responsive. They start cleaning up their own plastics, or you have community decisions or initiatives where they voluntarily get rid of plastic bags and these kind of things. So involving people in these kind of things and giving them a certain degree of autonomy and power, I think would help. But if I don't even know how to get my own kid off the PlayStation, then I also don't know what I should tell a mayor how to get all his citizens involved. So.
But that's basically more a common thread that could unite people, or opportunities? Because you mentioned plastic, and then after your response, I would ask to show another video, an example of a startup basically in Amsterdam. It's called Plastic Whale. What they did, they started fishing plastic bottles in canals in Amsterdam, and there is already the first boat created out of 10,000 bottles. So basically that's the idea that united proactive people.
No, I think, threat also unites people, that's obvious, but ideally you don't want to need a threat to do that. So it can be opportunity, and it can also be that people often like the feeling of doing something together. Human beings are not in the end individuals, we are group animals, so we like to do things together. So if you have these kind of projects where we all get out and do something which is good for the community, we actually like to do that. We have this Volunteers Day in the Netherlands, and then every year there's one day where people can do something for a local community, a local hospital, a local orphanage, or whatever. And 300,000 people participate in that, and we have a huge volunteer community, and those things help, because people then feel that they're doing something good. And they're doing something together with others and sharing that, so yeah.
Thank you. Let's watch this video about Plastic Whale, because it's really interesting how you can even make innovations from the garbage and how people unite.
Hi, I'm Marius, founder of Plastic Whale. Hi, I'm Marius, founder of Plastic Whale, the first professional plastic fishing company in the world. It started 5 years ago with a challenge to build a boat made of plastic waste, because we wanted to do something against the problem of the plastic soup, plastic waste polluting the world's waters. Plastic soup isn't just a faraway problem, it starts right here in our own backyard. And that's where we can do something against it, together. That's why we decided to do something against this problem. We wanted to create a positive change, something that would involve as many people as possible. In no time, the idea of Plastic Whale spun out of control. An ever-growing number of people got involved. Together we created a new event, Amsterdam Plastic Fishing. An instant hit. People just love to go plastic fishing on the canals. With all these people, we fished tons of plastic waste and tens of thousands of plastic bottles out of the water. We recycled the bottles into foam plates, and we use those foam plates to build our boats. The more boats we build, the more plastic we can fish together. Just 2 years ago, we presented our first boat made of Amsterdam canal plastic. Today, we have a fleet of 7. We aim to involve many more people, fish much more plastic waste, and build many more boats. Not just in Amsterdam, but around the world. Now you can support Plastic Whale by sailing with us on the beautiful canals of Amsterdam with your own private skipper. And if you want to fish for plastic with us, you're more than welcome to. It's a great experience for young and old, for companies and tourists. You have a great boat ride and you contribute to plastic-free canals at the same time. We love to welcome you aboard on one of our Plastic Whales.
Now I have a question, not to you, but to all the participants who watched the video. Who would go there and to fish for plastic? Хто би поїхав і риболовив би? So basically we can organize something similar as at Dnipro River in Kyiv, yes, and it would be helpful and we would create a new boat. Could responsibility be educated, or it's something that is inherited, or...
You have to ask, I'm just a startup envoy, I'm not a psychiatrist, so I don't know, psychology.
Good, but then, because talking about education, that was my link to education, you said once, again, in one of your interviews, that it would be good to include entrepreneurship into education. What would be the best way to do it? Should it be at school? Should it be something like professional, for instance, in Canada, in Amsterdam, in what I saw also in Tel Aviv, there are incubators that are academic incubators in universities. Should that be the way to introduce entrepreneurship, or some other possible ways?
Well, I think entrepreneurship is a very undervalued skill, because we teach our kids knowledge, and then you have to reproduce the knowledge, and then it educates them basically to become a rounded citizen, or an academic, or you get the skills you need to do to whatever craft that you may want. But an entrepreneur takes opportunities that are not given to them. You know, you're not an employee, you're not given a set of responsibilities, but you have nothing. I mean, you start building things out of nothing. And I think entrepreneurial mindset is good for everyone. You know, that once you don't get it, you don't lay back and say, well, you know, and I'm going to wait for somebody to help me. No, but you actually think, well, you know, how can I make something out of this? You know, how can I turn a challenge into an opportunity? And I think some countries are more entrepreneurial than others. I was surprised, you know, a country like Israel, you feel that there are, you know, everyone seems to be an entrepreneur. And in some Asian countries as well, everybody's always doing business. The Netherlands is a trading country, is relatively business oriented as well. I think most people are sympathetic to business, but we're also very well off. So why would you risk, if, you know, pensions and healthcare and all of these good things, to start on your own and have nothing? And so it takes something. You know, there's much less urgency here to do it. So if you want to let more people, or get more people to become an entrepreneur or be entrepreneurial, I think you have to also demonstrate that in schools. Our teachers typically are not so entrepreneurial. They're relatively risk averse, they're process-minded people and not kind of result-oriented like the entrepreneurs. So typically schools do not, and school systems do not support entrepreneurship. And how you do it, I think, is by letting kids do it. I mean, give them I don't know, 10 euros and say, well, how do you know, develop your business, and then and how can you, at the end of the week, we see who's got more, made more out of their 10 euros, and then you can start talking about it. So what do you need for this? Do you need marketing, or do you need to develop your product, and where are you going to put your 10 euros? And it just helps them think about the value of money. It helps you think about how, you know, being smart, strategy. Do I work with other people? Am I going to give him a little bit of my money so he can do something for me? I mean, just all of those things that happen in real life. And I see that with your kids. If you start doing that, they start thinking about more options, and they're more creative in solving problems. So I think it's useful.
I will give you just one example. We have a program that Western NIS Enterprise Fund supports. It's called Technovation Challenge. That's about coding girls. It's at schools, 3 months of coding, and they develop a mobile application that help to solve community problems. One of them was an IT mobile application measuring the pollution, air pollution in the city. They met a deputy mayor. They showed like these girls of 14, 15 years old. And then it's very interesting that they could also be a change makers, and that's what they could be taught in school. The question I have, can startups be social, and is there a future in social startups? I mean, social, those that are solving problems of the community, like ecology or water pollution or others.
Yeah, well, like you see this here. And we have another startup called Ocean Cleanup, and he's a young entrepreneur. I think he's 23 now, and he wants to clean up the plastic in the oceans. And he's going to, his first installation is going to go out in San Francisco spring next year. And he's doing it, and we can have many governments talking about how to solve the problem, and we have many NGOs saying how awful it is and doing activism and all that, but they're not solving the problem. And here's a guy who's thought about an engineering solution, how to solve the problem. And then I found other people that are looking, say, well, yeah, the plastic is in the sea, but where does it come from? It comes from rivers. It's produced. You can try to tell everybody not to litter. No, that's one strategy, but we know it doesn't work. We also know that the bulk of the rivers are producing the plastic for that end up in the plastic soup. So this is a Dutch company, and something very simple, because the problem obviously you can't catch the plastic and not stop the traffic on the river. So, but they have a rubber tube with air bubbles, and it bubbles the plastic to the surface, and they create a kind of an air barrier, and it slowly shifts all the plastic to the side of the river, where you can then get it out of the river. Super simple solution, and that's what an entrepreneur, a social entrepreneur does, instead of trying to convince the whole world not to throw their plastic bags in the river, which also is an important thing to do, of course.
So which problem would you want to solve personally creating a startup, let's say? What is the problem bothering you the most as a citizen? I mean.
Well, as I think the biggest problem for us, look, you have all these the macro problems like the climate and all that. But no, I think in society it is social equality and the risk of segregation. So, and there are startups that are, and it has a difficult model, but you actually get people to eat in other people's kitchens, and which is a very nice idea, is that, for instance, if you have Syrian refugees, they come to the Netherlands, and how do you meet those people? How do you make sure that they don't become, they don't get isolated in their asylum centers, that they actually become part of our society? So they would cook, and you could actually eat in their kitchen, and it's an app, so you can see who is cooking where, and you can go and you can go there. And so, I mean, these are very nice ideas, but it's a very hard problem to solve. But I think that would be the problem that I would like to find a solution for.
We will have in the evening before the dinner, we will also have a special guest, like a guy in a wheelchair, and could inclusiveness be helped by some startups, some IT technologies? Because we see in Ukrainian cities, I will be very honest with you, there is still a difficulty for people like with disabilities to move around the cities and everything.
You are much more friendly here than most conferences I go to. Most conferences have a very high stage you have to jump onto, and here you've got a ramp, so you've been already more. At least more progressive than most places.
Yeah, because...
Таке потрібно оплесками привітати. Ірина, Рубен приїхав, тому
так. Так, я якраз хочу, ти мені зіпсував весь сюрприз. Happy to welcome on stage, I would even say a special friend, the entrance is there, the special friend of Ukraine, the one who is promoting startup ecosystem innovations in cities, the one whose book was translated, and you know that StartupCity in the Netherlands, they had only 100 copies. In Ukraine, when we translated it for the first time, it's already 1,000 copies. Ruben signed 300, 400 already, but the most important that when they were doing the beta version, they included Ukrainian city there. That's a very big honor to welcome you on stage for and unfortunately, planes are being late sometimes, but it's never late for great people to join great meetings.
That's nice. Ruben, the mic.
Yeah. Some welcome. Okay, so first of all, it's great being back. And this is how you look like when you traveled 17 hours and you lost your luggage, so it's somewhere, you know, around the world.
We support you.
But this is what we do. We travel the world. Constantine is traveling to Slush tomorrow. I came just from Abidjan. There we had this European Africa Forum to connect Europe and Africa when it comes to startups and startup cities and share insights, share networks. So there was a lot of learnings over there, a lot of work to do. And then I was on a panel there and I said, I'm traveling to Kiev, as this is one of the, let's say, tech nations, Ukraine, and one of the startup cities that we work closely. So it's good being here. It's good stepping in and seeing our logo, our Startup Amsterdam logo as an international partner. And it's even special to walk in and just see our startup envoy, Prince Constantine of Orange, being interviewed by you, Irina. I hope I can see it afterwards. So I look forward to do now a workshop with a group of people. And then we will bring the learnings from that workshop tomorrow to the mayors and the civil servants. And then we build stronger bridges and we build stronger startup cities. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ruben.
I think I abused a bit of your time and my personal presence in all these questions, but I'm sure that all of these people, they also have questions to ask you. And if we may give them this chance, knowing that you are again for the first time in Ukraine, we would be very happy to accept questions from the audience.
Michel Tereshchenko.
It's not working, so you have to
Можна ще раз нам трошки...
Yeah, but if you can translate
it. No, it's okay. She was talking about the opportunity to ask questions. Can you hear me, sir?
Named Glukhiv,
Mr.
and I would like to send a word of thanks
to
the Prince of Orange and to the people from Netherlands. We were lucky to have, you have in Netherlands a very good association named Ukrainian in Netherlands, Ukraine-Civ Nederlander. And they have given us an ambulance, a car that could save the life of people. So we are very thankful to the people of Netherlands and to the Ukrainians of Netherlands and to you. Unfortunately, this ambulance so far has not arrived in Glukhiv because of the bureaucracy and the corruption in Ukraine. So if you could say a little word for us to the people you're going to meet so they could release this ambulance and could start saving life in Glukhiv, we will be very, very thankful. Thank you.
Okay. I don't think I'm meeting the right people to release your ambulance, but maybe, I mean, there are enough mayors in this place. Who knows anyone that has any influence on the ambulance in this room?
That's very Ukrainian.
Has nobody got any influence on if the ambulance can come to the city? Someone? Yeah, we got someone here.
Yeah, that's Canadian government representatives.
Actually, the government of Canada is funding a program bringing in refurbished ambulances from Canada and supplying different regions. So we can learn more about your city after.
I think what Michelle Tereshchenko was saying, that sometimes even when we have a good communication and partnership with other countries, there are some bureaucratical obstacles to have this partnership, effective. So I think it's really the question, not to you, but just to show the reality that sometimes it's difficult and we need to try to overcome these obstacles, and we will, from our side, and we will try to help you as much as we can.
No, I get that, but I also get that there are many people in this room that are part of bureaucracies that actually can solve the problem. And I guess if you've got many Canadian ambulances into this country, you might maybe be able to get one Dutch one too.
And no, I like the approach. Ask the question in the audience. Actually, I do have a question. May I?
Yeah. Okay.
I'll stand up. My name's Katie Ward. I work with the Government of Canada, but now here in Ukraine for the last 2 years and maybe for the next 5 years working on development with cities. What's interesting is your experience from very high-level international NGOs and commissions, European Union, the rest of it, and transitioning down to the municipal level. I think everybody in this room is biased that the municipal level is the most important in terms of economic development, social development of cities. So, and now we're all begging the question, how do we reach UN Sustainable Development Goals? How does Ukraine transition into this global narrative? And so I'd love to hear from your perspective what it was like from that transition, from working at these very high-level international NGOs, government organizations, down to the local. And how is that perspective from the top down, but really from the bottom up is how growth occurs, shaped your approach in the work you're doing now?
I think the answer is, when I was at the European Commission, we had a challenge that digital was not, this was 2010, was not acknowledged as it is today. I mean, it was IT and people thought it was a vertical. So it's basically you got transport and you got electricity or energy, and then you have IT and blah, blah. So we're trying to say, digital is much more pervasive. It's going to change everything, and so but we didn't get that message across. It was not political. It was techie, and so we started thinking, well, we as European level, we're even a higher level than the governments that don't get it, and then so how do we reach the people? And in fact, because we had programs, we were spending a year like 40 million on research in software, and you ask, why do you do this? And you say, well, we don't have a Facebook. And say, well, do you think the 40 million is going to make any impact on that problem? But so we said, well, we have to reach out to the people that are actually the innovators, that are applying digital solutions in healthcare, in education, in energy, everywhere. And so we then, instead of trying to push from Brussels or try to get everybody to come to Brussels, we say, well, why don't we go where the people are and where the change people are? And so my boss, at the time, she was already 72, so it's not an age thing. She went to campus parties, she went to TechCrunch, she went to Slush, she went to Pioneers, she went to all of these conferences to listen to young entrepreneurs and ask them what they need and how could we help them. So I went to conferences of IT and education and talked to these people and said, how do we empower those innovators? So even then we were really at the top, we felt that there was a much stronger connection to the people that were doing it, and that connection empowered them to fight their systems. And as we were saying earlier, I felt that we were fighting a lot of systems ourselves. But empowering those was for us, one, very inspiring. It gave us stories to tell, and also it made a change happening from the bottom up. But I agree with you that most dynamics happen in cities, and cities are the social laboratories for the future. And we must invest a lot in cities, and also in innovation in cities. That's why I think we're here, and that's why I think people like Ruben are important, because they connect with the startup community.
Хто хотів би ще поставити запитання? Будь ласка.
Who else would like to ask the question?
Program.
State your name, please.
My name is Natalie. I am the representative of NGO Park Natalka. I would like to know whether do you have any program of developing public spaces, such as parks, squares, with citizens? To create public spaces with citizens.
Different levels. So, I mean, we had this quite some time ago already, where you had basically virtual reality, where, for instance, in a town like Helmond, a small town in the Netherlands and other places, what they would do is basically, if there was a new city development or the town square would be redesigned or redeveloped, they would create a virtual environment where people could go and actually experiment and see what they would like in that public space, and they could leave questions behind or comments behind, and so those things were experimented with. I could not say that they are pervasive. I don't think that that every town would use that kind of technology. What they did, I think, at the time, find that it helps a lot in reducing development times, because people were much more empowered and they were actually engaged and supportive, whereas mostly when a government decides to redesign a square or a neighborhood, you get a lot of resistance, and here people actually felt that they were part of it and they could actually shape it more the way they wanted to have it. Yeah.
I would even add, just from Ukrainian perspective and Ukrainian experience, usually it happens in a way that no one knows which park will appear, you know, what will be built, and then there is a scandal. So the way of engaging people through AI or like really innovation, that's really a great also possibility to avoid these conflicts, but you know, to make the most comfortable place for all people and really show this openness, not only comfort, but also transparency of the government, the local governments, and like AI can be really contributing to this.
I have a question, if I may. So Prince Constantine, you mentioned that one of the approaches that you have in Netherlands and in the city of Amsterdam as well is something that is called the sandbox approach. So you basically gave the freedom for different entities, startups, innovators, to create some kind of a solution which could help the city, the citizens, and then they would test it in your sandbox, basically, in the city or in the country as well. And we are debating whether this is the right approach for Ukraine, but it's really hard to, how to say, to compel those who are in charge of political will that this is important. How would you compel them in 3 very specific points?
So I think the sandbox works really well for regulation and, for instance, what Estonia has done with Uber and Airbnb is to basically see, well, how can you be compliant? The new business model, how can the new business model be compliant, and play around a bit and see how government can react to new developments and how these new developments can be compliant to regulation. So regulatory sandboxes are quite well developed, and we have, for instance, our central bank has that for fintech, so that fintech companies can change. When you talk about new solutions, like there's more innovative procurement, I think it's really important that the people that are procuring the innovation feel that they're safe in doing so. So if you are a procurement officer and you don't follow all the rules, you don't tick the boxes, then if something goes wrong, you know, you procure an IT system, but it doesn't deliver, or it's 10 times over budget, and you get the blame, why would you take the risk? Then you go with, you know, with Capgemini, or you go with McKinsey or whatever, so, or IBM. So you have to reward people, or at least make sure that the risk is rightly attributed. I think that's really important.
Thank you. We have a following question over here.
Елена Молоданова, украинские журналисты.
Elena Molodonova, Ukrainian journalist for disabled people. We have many buildings that are abandoned. We want them to be available for the disabled people, but when we ask for that, we get a refusal because they say that they cannot arrange it for disabled people. In the Netherlands, you make such buildings available for the disabled people, but can you give us a piece of advice on how to make it in Ukraine?
Well, I mean, advice. I mean, it's quite a costly thing. I mean, so
Мені здається,
people. I
що
mean,
це
there has to be a
доволі
policy and have to be
дорога
budgets available
річ.
to do it.
Потрібна політика і
What I know
бюджет на
from
такі
what they did in
речі.
London is they made an app. I think Vodafone had a competition. There was an app where people with disabilities could at least know in advance if a building was enabled for people with disabilities or not. So if you knew that if you'd go there, you know you'd have to take extra time or not. So that was one solution. But to actually facilitate through the sanitation and access to buildings and all that, I mean, is quite a big policy debate.
Can I follow up on this? I think the actual understanding of this question would be this. So we come to the city where there are places which we cannot access on the wheelchair, and we ask the person, why cannot we access this building? And someone says, oh, because it's an old building, you just can't access it. That's it. So it's not a question of procurement or budgeting.
No, but it's to make the elevators available, I mean, it takes time, and somebody has to take the responsibility for that. So you create a law, and the law there's, for instance, a European law on accessibility, where every building has to be accessible. It means that you don't have excessive barriers, or you have alternative accesses and all those things. So you have to do that by law and then by investment. And somebody has to put money in to put the infrastructure in place.
And who put money into that in Netherlands? In the Netherlands?
I mean, I don't know exactly, but there is a piece of legislation that obliges you to do that. So if you build a new building, you'll have to do it anyway, like CO2 neutrality or these kind of requirements. And for all buildings, you have to retrofit them. So every time if there's a renovation, you have to make sure that it's also compliant with accessibility rules, with fire regulations, and all of those things.
Thank you.
Maybe that's actually the most important thing. That we do this for fire regulations. So because we find that really important, and so it's also about the political importance that you give to dealing with people with disabilities and allowing them access. And I think often it's a bit of an afterthought. And we had a long battle at the European Commission about a specific issue, and it is accessibility of websites for blind people. And how do you do that? I mean, and actually it's not so difficult, because it's just a piece of software and if it's a way that you design a website. But we were troubled in finding, is that our role to come with a norm that sets this or not? Do we just stimulate that? And so there were very intense discussions, I remember, with the Association of the Blind. And I remember that we then got a demonstration, and then if you don't have any site and you actually do have to maneuver websites, you suddenly discover what kind of world these people live in, because everything is going digital. We just assume that people can take these services, and we don't think at all about what it means if you cannot actually access those tools. And but it's a difficult discussion if you want to make that a general norm. And then enforce it as well. How do you enforce it? How do you go to all those buildings? And that requires, again, quite an investment in people and in procedures, etc.
Thank you.
I would like also to attract your attention to the photo. It's Amsterdam in 1952. Do you remember the city like this? Because now I have the impression that bicycles
How old do you think I am? This is nice. A great compliment. No, in 52 I was not born yet, but.
No, but I presume that the bicycles didn't appear later. Like it's still quite new developments, like some last 10 years probably.
Oh no, bicycles. We always had bicycles. We had the first bicycle sharing program in the 60s. It was called the White Bike Program, and of course, what happened was that it was a brilliant program. Everybody could have a white bike, and you just pick it up and you dump it somewhere, and somebody else would pick it up. But of course, what happens is that people then paint it black and then ship it to another town, and then it's somebody's private property. And so that bike program didn't really work that well. And then we had an intermediate phase where the police would just say, if your bike was stolen, say, well, go steal another one. So that was a kind of an informal bike sharing arrangement. And then funny enough, when this whole bike sharing thing came up, in the new time with internet and all that, then we were actually quite slow in adopting a bike sharing program. We of course have them now, but we had one in the 60s. It was a good idea, but it, you know, the execution was not that great.
Still, according to some statistics, Amsterdam is the city where they steal bicycles a lot, even today, you know. So it's a safe city, but still with bicycles, there is this element of people.
Yeah, and then they throw them in the canals. I don't know why they do that, but it's really annoying. You have your bike and then you lock it up and then they throw it in the canal, which is, I don't know what fun is in that, but then you have Mr. Plastic Whale who can fish him out again.
If we have still a question, we will take one.
У кого є запитання, ми ще одне запитання залюбки приймемо від вас.
If there is any question, any...
Shlomo, you have a question? No? Okay. Anyone else? Okay, really? You sure? Okay.
So if we don't have questions, I would like to invite you publicly next year to come to International Mayor Summit. But I also want you to see another Kiev. Kiev with more bicycles, Kiev with more places for and equipment for people with disabilities, Kiev that will be like really greener city as it is now. And that's already the responsibility of Ukrainians, the current mayor, and also Ukrainian citizens. Thank you so much for being such an inspiration for us. Thank you for your cities that are like really branded cities, but also the country that is also like a big brand, and that we have the possibility of learning from you. One of the very important things that I've learned today is also that startups are great, entrepreneurship is great, but still we have sometimes obstacles with bureaucracy. And I do hope that also local governance will learn from business, from startups, how to make it more efficient and really make a transformation of lives for people, you know, just to make it better. Thank you so much for being our guest. I still think you look very young, and sorry for this 1952. And really hope to see you next year or at some moment here again in Ukraine.
Thank you.
Thank you. Дякуємо, Ірина. Принц Константин.
Thank you, Your Highness. Thank you, Irina. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to tell you that now we're about to have a coffee break, but Prince Constantine will have a press briefing, so you're invited to have a break so you can enjoy interactive stands of Data Group, Visa, and Odessa Innovation Studio Pixelated Reality. So in half an hour sharp, we'll come back to our panel discussion, Creativity that Changes the Life of the People. Thank you.